agradecer a presença de... Sejam muito bem-vindos. Em nome da SF Brasil, a gente queria agradecer imensamente a presença de vocês nessa sessão da International Coaching Week 2025, que é a maior celebração global do coaching profissional do mundo. E esse ano, essa celebração é ainda mais especial, pois a gente está celebrando os 30 anos da SF no mundo. Agradecemos especialmente aos nossos patrocinadores, Ouro, Streamy, Nexi e Prata, LHH. Eu sou Juliana Lima, associada e voluntária da ICF Brasil, e junto comigo, no apoio, está a Juliana Lima, do Rio de Janeiro, minha homônima. A International Coaching Federation é a maior associação global de coaching, presente em mais de 140 países, com mais de 60 mil membros ao redor do mundo. E durante essa semana, de 12 a 18 de maio, a gente está celebrando a International Coaching Week com eventos em mais de 20 idiomas. Aqui no Brasil, a gente tem uma programação especial e gratuita, preparada com muito carinho. O link para a programação completa vai ser compartilhado aqui no chat. Aproveitem também para nos seguir nas nossas redes sociais do LinkedIn e Instagram. Os links também estão no chat. Esse evento conta com tradução simultânea em inglês e português. No seu PC, você pode clicar no ícone do globo, botão de interpretação, e na parte inferior da tela, e selecionar o idioma que você deseja ouvir. No celular, a opção está em mais ou 3 pontinhos. Interpretação de idiomas. Clique em Mute Original Áudio para silenciar o áudio original e ouvir apenas a tradução. A gente informa que esse evento está sendo gravado. E a gente lembra que respeitar os acordos com nossos palestrantes e participantes não é permitido o uso de robôs ou inteligência artificial para gravação ou transcrição dessa sessão. Você vai poder solicitar o seu certificado de participação fornecido pela CF Global, que promove Resource Development, preenchendo o formulário, vai ser disponibilizado no chat ao final do evento. Nesse mesmo formulário, você vai ser convidado a avaliar o evento, deixar o seu depoimento e, se quiser, gravar um vídeo contando sobre a sua experiência com a International Coaching Week. E para você que é associado à ICF Brasil, está acompanhando a nossa programação, temos um convite especial. Durante a International Coaching Week, estamos lançando o programa de coaching pro bono internacional Coaching Week 2025, através da parceria do Comitê de Responsabilidade Social com a Ensina Brasil. Estamos convidando você, coach associado à ICF, para ser voluntário nesse programa. A Ensina Brasil, ela desenvolve lideranças que atuam como professores em escolas públicas de comunidades vulneráveis por 2 anos, preparando-os para liderar mudanças em diversos setores. Mas essa transformação não para por aí, ela começa com você, coach associado da ICF. Então, imagina ser parte dessa jornada de impacto social, apoiando líderes em formação e os ajudando a superar desafios e a potencializar o seu propósito de transformar a realidade. O link para se candidatar ao programa de coaching pro bono e mais informações também vai ser disponibilizado no chat. Vamos lá! Para iniciar o painel, gostaríamos de dar as boas-vindas à nossa convidada, Renee Thornborough, do painel Coaching de Vida Não é Somente para Adultos. 3 habilidades poderosas que toda criança deve aprender quando ainda jovem. A Renee é fundadora da Adventures in Wisdom e autora do The Adventures in Wisdom Life Coaching for Kids Curriculum. Desde 2013, o seu programa já formou coaches em mais de 30 países, levando coaching de vida e habilidades de mentalidade para crianças por meio de histórias e atividades. Ela é especialista em desenvolvimento pessoal, é membro da International Coach Federation e ex-conselheira da CTO. Renee também foi executiva de marketing, de bacharelado pela Texas A&M e MBA pela University of Texas. É casada há 35 anos, mãe de gêmeos de 23 anos. A Renee, queríamos registrar a nossa alegria por aceitar o convite e estar conosco nessa semana tão especial para compartilhar sua experiência e o seu conhecimento.
We ready to start?
Por favor.
I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, let me put it in slideshow mode. There we go. Okay, I can see Juliana Lima. Thumbs up if you can see my screen. Okay, good. Well, thank you everyone for your interest in learning more about bringing life coaching and personal development to our kids. Whether you have kids, you have clients who have kids, or maybe you're interested in working with children yourself, I know you're going to pick up some hands-on tools that you can use with the children in your lives, and even some things you can use with your adult clients as well. So you will be in action after today's call. I have probably about 35-ish to 40 minutes of content, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. And we'll skip this part about ICF because it sounds like your team there is already going to cover this for resource development for you. So we'll just jump right into our learning. And what I found with folks who are trained in the ICF methodology is sometimes there's a question about how do you coach children using the ICF framework? Well, coaching kids is different from coaching adults. And the reason for that is brain development. You see, as adults, we have much stronger critical thinking skills because the frontal lobes of our brain, where critical thinking occurs, are fully developed. This critical thinking enables us to make distinctions and draw conclusions more effectively. We also have greater life experience from which to draw upon. It's one of the reasons why powerful questioning is such an ideal tool when we're working with our adult clients. And it's a key tool that we use for building awareness. Well, children's brains are different. Their frontal lobes are not fully developed. Their critical reasoning skills are not fully developed. So as a result, we need to use a different approach. Coaching kids requires that we add a teaching component to help lay this foundation of knowledge and understanding. And then we use our powerful questioning techniques, our listening skills to really support children in applying this awareness to their own lives. And at Adventures in Wisdom, our secret sauce for working with kids is that we use coaching stories in our work with kids. And we use stories that are written in a fable format. And our stories are designed to help lay that foundation of knowledge. And then our coaches can use those stories. They can reference the characters and the situations in those stories in their work with kids. So through these stories, our children gain awareness of what's happening in their lives. They gain awareness that there's another option, that they can make another decision as far as how they want to move forward. It might be a different decision in the way they're thinking about something or the actions they take, or in most cases, both. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about why life coaching is so critical for our youth. We're going to talk about 3 traps that crush self-esteem, and we're going to talk about mindset skills that can help kids beat those traps. We're going to talk about why coaching stories are the most effective way to help children master these skills. So we're going to jump in by looking at a situation that two people, Michael and Susan, both faced. And we'll start with Michael. And when he was 10 years old, he had the opportunity that every young baseball player dreams of. It was the bottom of the last inning. The bases were loaded. Game was tied. There was 1 out. And he had a chance to win the game for his team. Well, the pitcher threw the first pitch, strike 1. He threw that second pitch, strike 2. He threw that third pitch, and crack, the ball went flying to the shortstop. The double play was over in a matter of seconds. There was a huge moan from the crowd, and Michael slumped to the bench, mumbling, "I'm such a loser, I quit." Michael was humiliated, and he no longer wanted to play baseball. I'm sure most of you have seen something like this happen before. It may not have been a baseball game, but some event in life where your child or someone you really cared about, or maybe even you experienced this, just faced a big disappointment and just wilted before your eyes. When faced with challenges and disappointments, most kids don't have the tools to handle them. As a result, they often get down on themselves or they give up on themselves, developing beliefs that can hold them back for the rest of their lives. This can crush their self-esteem and it can crush their confidence. And as a coach, I'm sure you've seen the impact of childhood events on your adult clients. You may have even experienced it yourself. The impact can be very damaging when children develop beliefs about themselves that don't support them in life. And Susan is a perfect example of this. She's a friend of mine, and I changed her name even though she talks about the story publicly. But when she was a freshman in high school, she decided to audition for her 9th grade play. And she was really excited. She anticipated getting the leading role because the year before in the 8th grade play, she had won the leading role. Well, her new drama teacher called her and another girl into his office to have them read for the part. Well, after the reading, the drama teacher looked at her friend and said, "Well, that was amazing. You're a natural actress." So Susan, she was really excited because she had beaten this other girl out the year before. And she thought, well, if she's amazing, I must be a superstar. So as she stood there waiting to hear her highest praise, the drama teacher looked at her and said, "Susan, that stunk." She was devastated. Susan didn't step on a stage again for 20 years. So her belief in herself were demolished with one sentence. So we have a child, a disappointment, limiting belief, life path altered. What would her life have been like if this hadn't happened? Of course, we have no way of knowing that. The good news for Susan is that many years later, as an adult, she became a life coach and she began to understand what happened to her when she was younger, and she rekindled her passion for the stage. And now she's a professional speaker and she teaches others how to give talks that wow their audience. So we can do a quick check-in. If you in the chat box, you can, I'm curious, have you ever helped an adult client work through a limiting belief that was created in childhood? And you could just put chat or just yes in the chat, or if you want to describe it. It's something we can look at later, but just want to give you a chance to kind of reflect on that a little bit. But in the meantime, we'll go ahead and continue on. We all want our children to be happy, right? We want them to walk in the world with their head held high. But the big question is how do we help them get that? Because it doesn't matter how much we love our kids. We can't give them self-esteem. We can't give them confidence. We can't give them success in life. But what we can do is help them to develop it in themselves. And that's what today is all about. Because most kids suffer from something I call yo-yo self-esteem. So yo-yo self-esteem occurs when their self-esteem rises and falls with the ups and downs of life. Hit a home run, feel great about themselves. Strike out, crashing down. Get A on a test, feel great about themselves. And they just kind of go up and down. The problem is that these external factors are what's determining how they feel about themselves. And this can really lead to some unhappy kids who aren't sure about themselves. And I know a little something about this because as a kid, I definitely suffered from yo-yo self-esteem. If I did great on a test, man, I felt good about myself. If I messed up in a soccer game, down I would go. And I just felt like this yo-yo going up and down and up and down. And it wasn't until after college I discovered the field of personal development and I learned how to break free. But when I was first learning these mindset skills, I remember thinking to myself, why didn't I learn this when I was a kid? It made no sense to me that the personal development world and then later the life coaching world focuses on grown-ups when those core thoughts and beliefs that shape who we are and what we think about the world and what's possible for ourselves are formed when we're really young. And I knew that when I had children, I wanted them to learn this powerful way of thinking at a young age. And through the years, I had become an expert in personal development work. I used my skills to create a very successful corporate career, happy, fulfilling marriage. And then 23 years ago, I did become a mom of twins. And when my kids were old enough to start understanding what I wanted to teach them, I couldn't find anything out there on mindset skills. There were things on, how to get your kids to behave, some things on character development, but nothing on mindset development, really helping my children learn how to use the power of their thoughts to create happiness, to build their self-esteem, to, create their confidence and achieve their goals. And when I started talking with my kids, sometimes it felt a little lectury and I didn't want my kids rolling their eyes every time I opened my mouth. So I started writing stories. And that really was when the magic happened because my kids loved the stories, but even more important, they were learning the concepts. And from there, my vision just grew. I really thought, man, I want to help other children as well. So I retired from my corporate job. I was fortunate enough to take a year off and write the rest of the curriculum. And I launched Adventures in Wisdom. And at first, I was offering my program to parents to use with their own children, but I was having coaches and counselors and educators and therapists ask me if they could use my work in their work. And I thought that was a great idea. So I formalized a certification program to use the Adventures in Wisdom life coaching for kids curriculum in their work. And the amazing thing is that we now have coaches in it's actually over 40 countries that are using our work to empower kids. So I'm just thrilled that kids around the world are getting this powerful message of this powerful way of thinking, and honored that you're taking some time out today to learn about this as well. So you can share this message with the children in your lives and with your clients as well. So let's get into the training. Let's go ahead and talk about why self-esteem is so important. Well, how kids feel about themselves, it's one of the biggest influences on their happiness and on what they create in their lives. Because kids with high self-esteem, they tend to feel good about themselves. They tend to describe themselves as happy, more comfortable in their own skin. They're also more likely to go for their goals and dreams and to stay true to their values, and more likely to stand up to peer pressure. On the flip side,
Renee,
yes.
do you mind just speaking a little bit more slowly, please?
Yes. Thanks
Thank
for
you
the
so much. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So on the flip side, kids with lower self-esteem, they tend to get down on themselves, often feeling like they're not okay or that something's wrong with them. They might feel self-conscious, overall sense of anxiety, like something's wrong with them, and more likely to be influenced by negative peer pressure. For our children, life events can wound them. Oftentimes, their parents don't realize it. And you might have experienced this as a child. My friend Susan, she never told anyone what was wrong or why she gave up acting. And parents often see a shift in their child's confidence or self-esteem, but they don't know what to do about it. And most of the time, kids are just too embarrassed to tell. They don't want their parents, the people that they love the most, to think less of them. So they often cry themselves to sleep at night, suffering in silence. And we have a lot of children who are struggling. Children's mental health was already in trouble before the pandemic. And since we've emerged, children really are in crisis. It's around the world. We talk to people from around the world, and regardless of country, culture, religion, millions of kids are struggling with how they feel about themselves day to day. So for kids, there's a lot of stressors. They want to fit in, there's peer pressure, academic pressure. Sometimes there might be marital issues at home, social media. A lot of things are getting our kids down. But this doesn't have to happen. This is where life coaching can help. Kids can learn how to effectively deal with the stress and the disappointments in their lives. The key to self-esteem, it's all about mindset. It's all about how kids think. And mindset is just a skill that can be developed. So before we jump into the traps, Juliana, is that better? Speed better?
It's perfect.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to talk about 3 traps that crush self-esteem, and we're going to talk about some mindset skills all kids can use to break free and works for us grown-ups too. All right, think for a minute about watching young children at play. It's magical. They're completely uninhibited. They laugh, dance, play. They don't care what other people think. 2 babies just enjoy each other. Just pure love, pure joy. But what happens is as these kids get older, they tend to notice that not all children are alike. They look different. They talk different. They play different. For some children, it's just an awareness, not much impact. But for other children, this realization can become damaging as they fall into the first trap that crushes self-esteem, and that's comparing themselves to others. So the first trap is making comparisons. You see, when kids live in comparison, it creates this constant state of judgment as they continually assess whether they're better than or less than the person they're comparing themselves to. Good, bad, right, wrong, smart, dumb, on and on and on. Both of these views can cause problems because judgment with a feeling of better than can create arrogance and a sense of entitlement. It can lead to kids who become conceited, who bully others, and who discriminate against others. On the flip side, judgment with a feeling of less than that erodes self-esteem. It can lead to self-criticism and self-doubt as kids see everyone else as better than they are. And what's really sad is that when kids see themselves as less than, they can spend so much time admiring other children's gifts and talents that they can't even see their own gifts and talents. So the skill we want to teach kids is about honoring their uniqueness. It's about diversity and how to honor their own uniqueness while honoring the uniqueness of others as well. Because if you think about it, the world needs all of us to thrive. What would happen if everybody was great at art, wanted to be an artist? Nobody wanted to become a doctor. Or everybody was great at science and wanted to be a researcher, and nobody wanted to become a teacher. When kids learn how to embrace their own uniqueness and the uniqueness of others, that voice in their head of constant comparison will quiet down a bit. And this will help them move through life feeling good about themselves, no matter who they're with. So let's look at this in relation to Michael. Who is he comparing himself to? Well, he was comparing himself to the hero he wanted to be. All of those baseball games he watched where the last batter won the game for his team. That's who he wanted to be. That's not what happened, so he saw himself as a loser. So I'm going to share with you how we use a coaching story to help children build awareness around the danger of comparison and develop the skill of honoring their own uniqueness and the uniqueness of others. The story we use at Adventures in Wisdom to teach the skill is called The Sun, the Wind, and the Rain. Now, all the stories are written in our curriculum are fables. So sometimes the characters are animals, sometimes they're children. In this story, the characters are forces of nature. Also, as part of the stories in our curriculum, we have a central character. He appears in all 27 of the stories. His name is Wyatt, the Wise Wizard, and he helps the characters of the story understand what's going on and how to use mindset skills to solve the challenge at hand so that they can be more empowered. You can kind of think of Wyatt as your partner in coaching kids. So in the story, the sun, the wind, and the rain, each of these forces of nature dreams of being the other. So during the story, they all have a chance to be the sun at the same time. And we see the devastating impact that this has on Earth. Then all of the forces of nature have a chance to be the wind at the same time. Again, we see the devastating impact this has on Earth. And then all of the forces of nature has a chance to be the rain at the same time. And we see the devastating impact that this has on Earth. And by the end of the story, each of these forces of nature really see how unique they are and how important they are. And they come to love themselves just as they are, because the Earth and the plants and animals on the Earth need all of them to thrive. So the sun rejoices in being the sun, the wind rejoices in being the wind, and the rain rejoices in being the rain. They each learn how to honor their own uniqueness and the uniqueness of the other forces of nature. So how do we use this in coaching? Once a child has heard the story, it can be referenced at any time during a coaching session or even reviewed again. So for example, if a child is comparing themselves to someone, you can just ask them the coaching question. What would this look like if the sun was rejoicing in being the sun? And this question takes them back to the story and opens up the conversation about honoring their own uniqueness. So I'm curious, again, you can just type in the chat. Have you ever seen comparison showing up in your adult clients? You can just type yet or yes, or if you want to share a little bit in there, you can certainly do that as well. I think that most of us still fall into that as sometimes, but the more we're aware of it, the more we have an opportunity to shift our thinking. So we have 2 activities you can share with the children in your life to start the conversation. The first activity is to have kids create an "It's Good to Be Me" list or even put together a poster. And we share prompts that kids can use, things like what's their favorite subject at school or sport, after school activity, 5 things they're good at or they love to do, what are their goals, their dreams for the year. Just really have them explore who they are, what's unique about them. And then part 2 of this is to ask them to talk with 5 other people. What are they good at? What do they love to do? They can talk to neighbors, relatives, friends, and then just sit down and have a conversation. Did everybody like the same thing? Were there any surprises? It gives them a chance to really explore the skill. So just as a review, that first trap that crushes self-esteem is making comparisons. The way we beat this trap and the mindset skill we want all kids to be able to learn at a young age is how to honor their own uniqueness and the uniqueness of others so that comparisons don't rule them. So let's talk about the second trap that crushes self-esteem. We're going to talk about a mindset skill that can really support them in shifting when things don't quite go their way. And that's when they define an event as who they are or as their identity. So let's go back to Michael. Michael was devastated. But kids are going to face disappointments, whether it's sports or school or with friends. And it's crushing as a parent to experience this, but we can't protect our kids from heartbreak. What we can do is support them in learning how to deal with it and how to heal from it. Because it's how they choose to think about those disappointments, those upsets, that will determine how those events impact their self-esteem. Because events are neutral. As human beings, we define events as either good or bad based on the meaning that we choose to assign to them. If we assign a more negative meaning to the event, we're going to experience what we call it adventures and wisdom in our stories, grungy feelings. So that's like feeling angry, frustrated, embarrassed, powerless. And if we assign a more positive meaning to an event or empowering meaning to the event, it really enables us to stand in our power and move forward. And that doesn't necessarily mean that what happened was okay, but it helps us shift out from that negative energy where we just feel like, almost like a victim in that situation. And this ability to change how we think about an event is an essential mindset skill that we want all kids to learn, and we call it power shifting. In coaching, we also call it shifting or sometimes reframing. It's all the same thing. And it's so powerful because it really supports kids in shifting how they're thinking about something and feeling better about the situation and feeling a little bit more in control about what happened. And of course, it works for us grown-ups too, because it's one of the key tools that we use when we're coaching our adult clients. So let's go back to the baseball example. In the baseball game, the event was the double play. So when Michael grounded into the double play and the game was over, he defined that as meaning that he was a loser. And that's definitely not a thought that helps him feel good about himself. But what's another way that Michael could have looked at it? Well, it was the last 2 outs of a ball game, and that was a bummer. He doesn't have to make it mean that he was a loser. It takes a lot more than 2 outs to lose a baseball game. Now, as grown-ups, especially those of us trained in coaching, this is heartbreaking because we understand shifting, we understand reframing, but our kids don't. And it's one of the reasons why it's such a critical skill for them to learn at a young age. They get to learn there's a big difference between feeling bad about something, which is just an event, and feeling bad about themselves, which is a judgment. So our coaches have a coaching story that teaches children that events are neutral and the skill of power shifting. We call this power goggles. So goggles are like what you wear. And there's a really fun activity for children where they have a chance to make their own pair of power goggles as an art project. And then they practice different scenarios where they can put on their grungy goggles, or sometimes they call them victim goggles, and they explore the scenario from that standpoint. And then they can put on their power goggles and explore the situation from a more empowered point of view. And it's just such a powerful activity. And then once a child has been through this skill, developing this, if they're struggling a little bit with how to handle a situation, well, a coaching question you can ask at any time is, what would this look like if you were to put on your power goggles? And this puts the child into a different thought pattern, which is to explore for new possibilities and a way to think about the situation. Kids absolutely love this activity. I really recommend that you share power shifting with the children in your life because it is such a powerful activity. So, and the best way to share this too, use the example about Michael. It's a very specific example, and they can see that Michael had a choice as to how he experienced his double play. One thought pattern caused him to see himself as a loser. He wanted to quit baseball, whereas the other thought pattern helped him see that it was just 2 outs of a ball game and that he was still a great baseball player. And you can even share some additional activities with them that, such as failing a test, messing up with whatever their favorite extracurricular activity is, not being invited to a baseball birthday party. Sorry. And this really helps them practice. So just as a review, that second trap occurs when kids define an event as who they are or their identity. I failed, I'm a failure. The key to beating this trap is to develop the skill of power shifting, really helping children learn that events are neutral and that they have the opportunity to define what that event means to them. So shifting that thought, I failed a test, I'm a failure, to I got a bad grade, I better study harder next time. So you can hear how that first statement tears the child down. They feel bad about themselves. And that second statement really empowers them to take action, which is to study more. And that's the power of power shifting. It's such an important skill for children to learn at a young age. So now we're going to talk about the third trap that crushes self-esteem, and that's negative self-talk. So self-talk, that's what we say to ourselves. Every moment of every day, we're saying something to ourselves through our thoughts and through our words. And these thoughts are either building us up or they're tearing us down. And most people aren't aware of it, especially our children. Generally, there's two categories of self-talk. We have negative self-talk and we have positive self-talk. So negative self-talk, that's the self-esteem crusher. Whereas positive self-talk, that's going to be the critical mindset skill we want to help kids develop to beat that trap. But why are positive thoughts so important? Well, positive thoughts are really important in positive self-talk because it has a positive physiological impact on our bodies, and it actually helps us rewire our brain. Because each time we use positive self-talk, it releases endorphins into our bodies that helps us feel good about ourselves. But it also helps us build the connections in our brain called neural pathways. And neural pathways really, they help our brain understand the world because it maps out the world based on what we've experienced. So each time we learn something new or experience something new, it's going to build that neural pathway. The more we think about it or do something, the stronger those neural pathways in our brain become. This is how our habits and even our comfort zone get created because the neural pathways are becoming ingrained. Now, here's the really neat thing for our children. The more they practice positive self-talk, the more it becomes their habit, the more it becomes their normal way of thinking, because each time they use positive self-talk, it's strengthening those neural pathways. When it comes to self-talk, though, it's really important that they do the cleanup first, because positive self-talk won't work if there's an undercurrent of negative self-talk that they're not aware of. So to build strong self-esteem, first we need to support our children in noticing and stopping the negative self-talk, and then to proactively start the positive self-talk. So how do we do this with kids? Well, the first thing is we want to support children in becoming aware of their negative self-talk. And the best way to do this, and what we teach children, is to pay attention to how they're feeling by watching for those grungy feelings we were talking about earlier. So remember, grungies are nervousness, anxiousness, feeling scared, uneasy. These types of grungy feelings, you just feel off in your body, right? Your mind's spinning. And a lot of times these grungy feelings are caused by our negative thoughts. And a lot of times the negative thoughts are about ourselves. In fact, the first two traps that we were talking about were forms of negative self-talk. The first thing we talked about was making comparisons, seeing ourselves as less than someone else. And us adults do it too. The second thing we talked about was defining events as who we are. So seeing ourselves as our results. You know, if you ever made a mistake and beat yourself up about it over and over for hours or even days, I think most people have probably done this before. The good news is we don't have to choose thoughts that get us down. You know, we can choose thoughts that support us in life. So what we want to teach kids is that when they notice the grungies and they have these negative thoughts, is to gently shift their thinking to more positive or supportive thoughts. And there's no need for self-beat up just because there were some negative thoughts. Just notice and gently shift to more supportive thoughts. We did this earlier when we handled those other traps. We talked about shifting comparison to honoring uniqueness. We talked about shifting from looking at events as who we are or results to using power shifting to change how we were thinking about it. So what we can teach our kids is a couple of things. First is to teach them how to spot the negative self-talk by watching for the grungies. And anytime they experience that, encourage them to examine their thoughts and gently shift. And if they get stuck, encourage them to come to you. And then the second thing you can do is share with them one of our coaching stories. It's called Choosing Your BFF. BFF stands for Best Friend Forever. This is skill book 15 from our curriculum. It's one of my favorite stories because The message is just so powerful for kids. And there's a powerful activity that helps children create a fun art project and practice this. I'm actually going to share part of this story with you here in a minute. I think we'll have time. And if we don't, I'm going to share with you how you can get a copy of this to use at home at the end of the training as well, so that if we don't have time for story time, because I do want to have enough time for Q&A, you'll be able to get that right after the call. So I want to shift for just a minute, shift gears, and talk about why stories are such a powerful way to bring coaching to children. Since 2013, we have worked with coaches all over the world, and we have seen time and again that stories are the most effective way to make lasting change with kids. Several reasons for this, but the number one is proven brain science. Because when we hear facts, that intellectual region of our brain that turns words into meaning are most engaged. However, when we hear a story, not only is that intellectual region of our brain engaged, but so are the sensory and emotional regions as well. This creates an experience because more of a child's brain is involved. And because more of the brain is involved, it's going to create stronger memories around both the story and the lessons from the story. Stories are also a powerful, non-threatening way to help kids learn how to navigate life. Most kids don't like to talk about feeling nervous or being afraid, but they love to talk about grungies and dragons. These are terms from our curriculum that give kids a safe way to talk about what they're feeling and what they're thinking. Also with stories, you can reference the characters and the situations from the stories during your coaching. So for example, the story that we use that teaches children about having an I can do it mindset is called Canville and Can'tville, A Tale of Two Towns. So if you're working with a child and they're getting down on themselves, thinking they can't do something, well, we ask them the coaching question, what would this look like if you're living in Canville? And the story takes them back to remembering that they can approach the situation more powerfully using the skills that you've helped them to develop. They're also great to start those important conversations. Sometimes kids shut down a little bit if they feel like they're the focus of the conversation, or maybe they'll feel feeling a little bit judged. And stories give them a chance to really experience the skill through the situation that the characters are facing. And that opens up the door for them to apply it to their own lives with your guidance as their coach. And of course, they're great for refreshers. Kids are learning a new skill. It's going to take practice. And hearing the stories over and over or referring to them really helps you refresh this topic without being lectury or boring. And finally, they're just fun. It adds so much engagement and fun to the coaching process as well. So let's let me see how much time. Yeah, we've got enough time here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share part of the story, Choosing Your BFF, just to introduce it. And then I will share with you, like I said, how you can get the whole thing that you can try out at home. Before I dive in, there's two things I want to share with you. First, I keep talking about coaching stories, but it's actually more than that. It is a curriculum. So each skill is taught through something we call it a skill book. We have a mentor's guide that has the background information and coaching tips. The children's guide is where you find the coaching story, discussion questions, and activity. And I'm going to share, if you want to sign up for the story, you're going to get both of these so you can actually try it out at home. And what I'm going to share with you is skill book 15. There's 27 stories. So when you read the story, it's going to reference things like conscious mind, subconscious mind, belief systems, neural pathways, comfort zone. All of these topics have been addressed earlier in the curriculum, so kids do understand these, and all of those topics are taught again through a story. So let's have a little story time. Choosing Your BFF, Best Friend Forever. It was the big day. Cheerleading tryouts, history test, an announcement of the art contest, all in one day. Trudy, the tortoise, woke up and her stomach was in knots. The events of the day were the first thing that popped into her mind. Well, maybe I shouldn't try out for cheerleading. I really can't jump very high, and I'm not as bouncy as the rabbits, she mumbled to herself. I bet it's not too late to back out. She put on her dress and looked in the mirror. Oh, she thought, I really need to find some new clothes. And she picked at her hair and frowned. Well, I probably won't be going up on stage for the art contest anyway. Peter and Julie's pictures were much better than mine. She moped to her desk, picked up her books, and looked at the facts for the test that day. Oh, she thought, I'm just no good at history. She started to head downstairs for breakfast when suddenly, poof, Wyatt the Wise Wizard appeared. Wyatt, what are you doing here? Sensing some major dragons and wanted to check in with you, answered Wyatt. Well, I don't see any dragons and I'm not feeling very grungy, said Trudy. What's going on? I was afraid of that, answered Wyatt. Of what? Asked Trudy. That you didn't even realize the dragons were here, answered Wyatt, very concerned. You see, you've been using negative self-talk for so long that it's a habit. You didn't even realize you were doing it. Well, tell me more, said Trudy. What's self-talk? I'm a bit confused. Definitely, said Wyatt, and he pointed his staff towards the ceiling, and 2 clouds appeared. In one cloud, Trudy saw her best friend, Nikki, and in the other cloud, she saw her other best friend, Pam. Nikki looked directly at Trudy and began to speak. Why did you wear that dress? It doesn't look very good on you. You really should wear your hair differently. Cheerleading tryouts are today. I don't know why you're even trying out. You're not going to make the team. Everyone knows that tortoises can't jump. You're just too heavy. And forget about passing that test. You're no good at history and your writing stinks. Oh, and that art project you submitted for the competition? Not good enough. Peter and Julie drew much better pictures. Yours will never win. Well, Trudy looked a bit surprised. She couldn't believe what Nikki was saying. How could my best friend talk to me that way? She asked Wyatt. Well, then Pam began to speak. Trudy, that's such a beautiful dress. It really makes your eyes look green. Good luck at cheerleading tryouts today. I know you're going to do great. Remember that tortoises make a great base for the pyramids, and you have such happy energy. Thanks for studying with me last night. We're both going to ace that history test. Oh, and that art project you submitted for the competition? Beautiful. I could feel the calm of the ocean just by looking at it. I bet you feel really proud of that picture. Good luck today. I can't wait to see you up on stage. Ooh, thought Trudy, now that's more like it. Now, said Wyatt, which friend would you rather be around? Negative Nikki or positive Pam? Well, duh, I want to be around Pam. I don't know why Nikki was talking to me that way. She was talking to you that way because that is the way you talk to yourself, answered Wyatt. And then Wyatt goes on to teach Trudy all about negative self-talk and positive self-talk, how to shift the negative self-talk, and how to proactively build the positive self-talk. So if you're interested, I'll share with you here in just a second how you can get that story to try out at home. The one last thing to share with you is, for all of us, the only way we know ourselves is by the thoughts that we have about ourselves. These thoughts are shaped by our self-talk. So imagine what this world would look like if all kids and all of us grown-ups used the skill of positive self-talk. In fact, all of the skills that we talked about today. And our kids are perfectly capable of learning these powerful mindset skills in childhood that really can set them up for life. And kids are really needing our support more than ever before. So let me share with you how you can get that story on our website, adventuresinwisdom.com. Up at the top, little tab says free story, and you can get a copy of it there. And with that, we can go ahead and we have some time and open it up to Q&A. Let me stop sharing my screen so I can see smiling faces. And I'll let y'all tell me how we want to manage Q&A.
Renê, muito obrigada. Tem muitos elogios aqui no chat, vários comentários agradecendo e elogiando o trabalho e comentando como seria bom se todo mundo conseguisse trabalhar com as crianças e não esperasse a idade adulta, né, para se trabalhar crenças e traumas e empoderar as crianças. desde cedo. Muito obrigada, elogios fortes. Algumas perguntas e alguns comentários, Renee. As pessoas gostariam de saber se teriam acesso a esse material. Pelo que eu entendi, você colocou no seu último slide aqui o acesso, como que a gente consegue chegar nessa informação?
I'm not hearing interpretation if a question's being asked. And my Portuguese is zero. I'm sorry. Was there a question asked? I'm not hearing, or if you want to maybe put in chat.
Ju, então faz a pergunta para ela em inglês mesmo aqui e
Ok, ok. Renee, people want to know how to access your material, this content, and I assume that it was in the last slide, correct? That you just put on.
Correct. I can put it.
Reach.
I can put it in the chat. Just the.
Thank you.
Yeah, the website.
Okay, I don't know if you heard, people are complimenting your work and they're amazed with the information you shared with us and all the thoughts. And there's a question regarding the age. Until which age can we work with the kids? What's the appropriate?
Yes, when I wrote the curriculum, I had in mind elementary, early middle school, so about the ages of 6 through 12, 13, 14-ish or so, because I wanted to help kids develop these skills when they were young so they could use them to their teenage years and beyond. One of the things that surprised me over the years is how many of our coaches use our work with teens. The most important thing to do when you're working with teens, actually some use our work with adult clients too, frame why, discuss or explain why you're using a children's story with a teenager. It's because of the brain science behind stories and storytelling and how it creates memories. And then you would just modify like discussion questions and make them more relevant to what's going on in teens' life. They may not want to do some of the activities like art projects. Some teens love it, others don't. So you do some modification there, but ideal, I wrote it for about grade 4, grade 5 level. So elementary, early middle school, but what I recommend you do, get a sample of the story and see if it would meet your needs. Yep.
Mais alguma pergunta? Ainda temos uns minutinhos.
Someone says, it's a joke, if we cure children, we will have fewer clients as they grow up. I think even those of us trained in mindset skills, I'm sure all of you have coaches too. We're always a work in progress. Yes. When you work with children, work one-on-one or in groups. Our coaches do one-on-one, some do small groups, some do workshops. So it's more than coaching. There's teaching and coaching. Of course, when you're working one-on-one, it's going to be stronger coaching component. If it's a workshop, it really is more of a training type of environment. So we have it's flexibility as far as how our coaches like to work with kids. A lot of our educators love a workshop environment because they're used to being in the classroom. Most of our coaches who coach adults, they want to work with kids one-on-one because being in front of a classroom scares them half to death. So it really depends on how you most like working with kids.
There's a question regarding the limit between life coaching and therapy. How can you identify that?
Yes, we actually have a couple of great resources on our website that talks about the difference between coaching and counseling, and a couple of infographics as well. So, coaching is really about supporting children who are mentally well, mentally healthy, and developing mindset skills to support them in building their confidence, their self-esteem, proactively building resilience and coping skills, learning how to set and achieve their goals, so they can really develop their mental fitness and mental wellness skills. Counseling and therapy, they tend to work more with children who are struggling with kind of handling and functioning in day-to-day life. So if you look at mental wellness, mental health on a continuum, we tend to have mental wellness on one end, mental illness on the other end. Counselors and therapists, they can work with all, but they tend to focus more on those children who are really struggling. Coaches are going to focus on the mental wellness side. They can move in to those children who are struggling a little bit with anxiety, but once it gets to be a little bit too serious, they refer out, just like we do with our adult clients. Good question. Flavio is confirming certification in English only right now. That's correct. Unfortunately, our program's only available in English at this time. One day soon, I would love to have that change, but we'd have to partner with someone who can help us. Our curriculum is huge, and it's not just the curriculum, it's the support. We have all the marketing, business, coaching tools and training. I mean, this is more than just a curriculum. It is a certification in supporting our coaches in building a successful coaching practice and helping kids. Thanks for clarifying, Flavio. Juliana, are you seeing any other questions? I can only read the ones in English.
No, there are no more.
Okay.
So I wanted to thank you again. Thank you very much for sharing. It was awesome, and a lot of people complimenting here in chat in Portuguese. Thank you so much for your time and for your valuable time. And
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor, and happy learning this week. I just love International Coaching Week.
Thank you.
pessoal, aqui no chat, então, para a gente finalizar, peço que vocês preencham um formulário de avaliação, o link está disponibilizado aqui. E caso você seja um coach e queira ser seu IACF, também a gente vai disponibilizar aqui o link do site. E agradecemos e convidamos vocês a participarem dos próximos eventos da International Coaching Week. E o link para a programação completa também aqui no chat para vocês. Muito obrigada.
Obrigada. Tchau,
Francisco.
pessoal. Valeu.
Thank
Obrigada,
you,
Juliana.
Renee.
Nada, thank you.
Obrigada. Um prazer.